You're watching Better Business Bureau's Business at its Best, brought to you by Ataraxis. You've got employees, we've got solutions. Human resources, insurance, benefits, and payroll. Our business is your business. BBB's Business at its Best.
And welcome to Business at its Best, presented by Ataraxis. We are here to help you make the most of your business. Today, our focus is on security. Did you know more than 125 million people had their personal information compromised because of data theft in the last year? That theft happens from the outside and the inside. Examples: within the past month, someone hacked into the computers at a Utah ski resort and stole credit card numbers. Then a guy working the drive-up window at a Burger King here in the Northwest stole customer credit card numbers. The big question: is your information protected? The experts are lined up from throughout Idaho, ready to show you what the thieves are looking for and how you can fight the fraud. We show you how your office equipment is a major threat. We look into the smartphone and how to keep it from being infected, and the sheer liability and expense of being a victim. Throughout the show, we're going to show you how to protect yourself. Big thanks to our media partners, Local News 8's Now channel in Idaho Falls and KTVB, Idaho's very own 24/7 in Twin Falls and Boise. We start today with the warning signs. Every person and every business is the target for the thief. The bad guy is simply looking for an opportunity. Jeff Flora is Western Regional Manager for KeyBank Corporate Investigations, and you cover a wide region right here in Idaho, and we thank you for being with us, Jeff. First of all, what are those consistent areas that you see people make some of the biggest mistakes in business?
A lot of them, there's inside jobs. They don't do the pre-employment background screening. These bookkeepers get transferred from business to business when they commit crimes, and they don't get arrested. So they got to have policies surrounding how you're going to hire these people to minimize the risk. Watch out for fraudulent transactions, scams from these consumer payments, bad checks, debit cards. Some people get really greedy. They think they're getting a big sale, and you know what? It's a stolen credit card. They ship the stuff away, and now they're out the money.
But it happens from both the outside and the inside. I mean, you talk about, and I've heard people say that employee who's always on time, you think they're the most trustworthy, they've been with you the longest, are oftentimes...
They're often the times that are ones that are trying to do things. You know, if you get not even with them, it's, whatever. So it's...
What are some of the warning signs then that a business is a victim in this situation?
Well, watching your bank account, scammers will send in very small penny deposits to see if accounts are active, phone calls or inquiries from vendors they didn't get their checks. That may indicate that checks and their payments have been stolen, or you have a problem with your inside bookkeeper. Your cash flow, I hear a lot of small business people say, oh, my cash flow, it just wasn't there. Well, you know what? It wasn't there because the bookkeeper was stealing the money. So, but they don't realize this for months and months and months, and then there's a big problem. And a lot of these businesses end up failing.
Now, I know I've had conversations with folks, some of your counterparts, and they say they see this happen day in and day out, and so
yes,
they've really just made it a habit. And the morning bowl of oatmeal is with your computer set up there on the desk, and you're looking at your bank account.
I check my bank account every morning, and if a business is not doing that every morning, they're just asking for trouble. We're in such an electronic world now that this money just disappears, and if you can see something's wrong in the morning when you're having your oatmeal, get to your bank, let them know immediately. We can take steps to correct this stuff.
So let's talk about, you brought 3 very simple prevention steps that a business can put into place immediately after watching this to help protect themselves.
Yeah, again, check your bank accounts daily, watch out for suspicious transactions, conduct a review of your internal controls, make sure that you have people that are not processing payments, reconciling accounts, receiving money. Conduct surprise little audits of these groups to make sure that they're doing it right. As you just pointed out, it's that trusted bookkeeper that comes to work every morning that could be doing things. Conduct a complete review of your antivirus software and your computers. These things where people click on links and they get these things caught on their computers. We're asking them to do online banking, but you got to protect yourself and watch your passwords. Make sure you're changing those things every 90 days. We hear so many people, oh, we fired this clerk. Well, did you change the passwords? No, the clerk came back or gave somebody, they got the passwords, and they get into these computers.
One of the things that I recommend businesses do is buy a computer that does nothing but your banking, because if you're, you talk to these small business owners and they're checking email, they're surfing the web, and they're doing their banking all on one computer, which just creates a whole host of problems.
Well, and who knows what their employees are doing when they're not there. They're probably
Exactly.
doing the same thing, and that's where you get these things. So you got to have this stuff current, up to date, and like I say, 90-day review is a very good practice for any business. As
All
far
right.
as that.
Excellent information for our small businesses. Thank you so much, Jeff Flora with KeyBank and the Fraud Investigations, and we appreciate your time here today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Coming up next on Business at its Best, an office products company with offices in Idaho Falls, Pocatello, and Burley shows us how to keep data safe on copiers and fax machines. First, what is your legal liability when it comes to data theft? If you get it wrong, it could shut down your company. You are watching Business at its Best, presented by Ataraxis. Welcome back to Business at its Best. If someone hacks into your system and steals customer credit card numbers or employees' personal information, the cost can be devastating to your company. You have the initial financial cost, then comes the legal liability. If you can't prove you did everything in your power to protect the information, you face huge fines. Dr. Bill Russell is General Counsel and Director of Community Relations for Northwest Nazarene University. Dr. Russell, thanks so much for being with us today.
Good afternoon.
Good to have you with us. What is the legal liability that faces a business if it loses data?
You know, if a company is doing business with anybody, vendors, customers, employees, and they keep information and that gets stolen, those people, those other companies are going to be upset and they're likely to come after the business, and that's what we talk about as liability. This is a very new and very unsettled area. Just as a point of reference, I opened up about a dozen law books yesterday, new textbooks for both lawyers and business people. There's not much in the textbooks about this. It's developing law. That's dangerous. That means that anything a clever lawyer can convince a judge or a jury is what you're going to have to pay. So it's an area where there's great risk because of the uncertainty, and the upside is, or the upside of liability, the downside to you is huge.
Okay, and we're talking some massive fines that could be levied against a business in these situations.
Well, fines, but more to the point, liability, damages. Somebody
Okay.
wants to be reimbursed for what's happened to them. You end up paying for their losses.
Gotcha. Now, we hear this term thrown around about taking reasonable measures to protect the data, and that seems so ambiguous. If I'm a business owner, and okay, what is considered a reasonable measure?
This is just like any other thing you do in business. It may be like driving a car, or like keeping your streets and sidewalks clear when it's icy. You have to act in a reasonable way to keep people safe, and the same thing with their data. So you need to do everything that's reasonable to protect them from damage, and you owe that obligation to everybody, and you owe it with damage. Reasonable steps, unfortunately, are whatever a jury says they are. So there's no magic line. Your game as a business person is to do everything you can to be able to make a case to a jury that you acted reasonably. And here's one of my keys. The answer that it cost a lot of money to do it is never going to impress a jury. That's just going to make them mad. So to say it to a jury, I didn't do it because it cost a lot of money, that doesn't impress a jury.
Okay.
That doesn't cut it.
Yeah, so we're talking about a good plan and investment up front to protect yourself.
Absolutely, and the best thing you can do is prevent this from ever happening. A couple of keys in my mind. Number one is don't keep data you don't have to have. So scrub everything you're storing about your customers, your vendors, your employees, and if you don't need it, get rid of it and make sure
Securely.
it's gone.
I mean, we keep reading about
Of course.
dumpsters, you know, boxes full of sensitive documents sitting next to a dumpster. That doesn't count.
But on a drive, make sure you scrub or whatever you need to do, anything you don't need.
And we're talking about that later on.
Yeah, and then, and this is another key, be honest with the people you're dealing business with. So if you're not comfortable that their data's secure, tell them that. And tell them that you can't promise that it won't be hacked. The worst thing you can do is lead them into thinking that they're secure when they're not.
All right, Dr. Bill Russell, NNU, thank you so much for being with us on the legal liabilities.
Have a great day.
You too. And Better Business Bureau's Business at its Best continues in moments. A data theft prevention plan, free and ready for you. Go to Facebook, search for BBB Snake River Region, and click the like button. You're going to find the link there. This edition of Business at its Best is focused on data security and keeping you, your company, employees, and customers safe. We're back with more in moments. Welcome back to Business at its Best. You know, most of us are packing a smartphone. Data thieves know this little thing is a treasure trove, and they're looking for every way possible to get access. I'm joined by Neil Custer of the Custer Agency and Don Bowers of College of Western Idaho. Neil and Don, thank you so much for being with us. College of Western Idaho, we know it is a community college. Don, Neil, tell us a little bit about the Custer Agency.
Custer Agency, we do investigations, computer forensic, and information security.
And you're working across the state. You've done a lot of work in the Pocatello,
Yes.
Idaho Falls area.
Yes, we do throughout Idaho and Eastern Oregon.
Okay, so we're talking about the QR code. And for folks who don't know what it is, Don, give us an idea of what this little code here at the bottom of this page on a magazine we see all over in advertising is all about.
Well, everybody's familiar with barcodes. This is just an evolution of the barcode technology. Barcodes have been around since about 1948. These came on the scene over in Japan. Actually, a subsidiary of Toyota began to develop these for tracking car parts and inventory. They can actually store, depending on the type of code, up to 7,000 characters in one code that size.
This little box right here in the corner.
Box.
Okay,
That's correct.
So how is it being used? How's it being exploited then?
Well, advertisers, of course, are using it in advertisements and so forth. The problem is that if you look at that code, you really can't tell what that information is. So you could be looking at one of those codes and snapping a picture of your cell phone, and you really don't know what data you're getting. You could be getting a link to a website that's a malicious website. You could actually be getting a virus that could be downloaded to your phone and activated right there on your phone.
So the question is, how do we protect ourselves from this? I mean, how do I know that somebody has taken and really is using this nefariously?
Yes. Well, that code actually was put on there by me.
You did. Okay.
Yes. The one on the front is a legitimate one, and the one on the back is not.
And I had no idea. We just showed this to the folks at home. But
Right.
now that you say it, I run my finger across it, and it is a sticker.
It is.
I can feel the sticker.
Yeah.
But I would have never known just
No.
by looking at it.
So I guess the bottom line is if you aren't sure of the source, don't scan it, because once it gets on that phone, it could be a virus. It could take you to a site that's asking you for more information. It could be a phishing site or providing you with some of your confidential information. So if you don't know the source, don't use it, just like on our emails today. If you don't know where it's coming from, don't scan it.
You know, I would never put the two together that the scammers could be using QR codes because they're becoming ubiquitous. They're all over the place
Yes, they
are.
as we see them. Okay. Good information. Don't trust it just because it's on the cover of a magazine. All right. Neil Custer, Don Bowers, Custer Agency and CWI, thank you so much for being with us and opening our eyes up to the next scam on the business horizon. When we come back, some quick tips to protect your phone. First of all, make sure that employees are not installing data hijacking apps like a chess app that was pulled from the Android marketplace not long ago because it was siphoning bank account logins off the users' smartphones. Yes, that really happened. These are not harmless games. Also, you want to implement some basic mobile security on all mobile devices. That means secure passwords, remote tracking, and wiping ability. Also, you want to be able to auto lock and auto wipe a call-in account on these mobile phones, smartphones. Only use protected Wi-Fi connections to access the web. Avoid those free Wi-Fi spots in coffee shops. Those are constantly monitored by data sniffers looking for ways to piggyback onto your account. Now, let's move to the bigger equipment like the computer sitting on your desk. What do you do about the hard drive when it's time to upgrade or get rid of the machine? An expert on wiping hard drives joins us next. You are watching Business at its Best, presented by Ataraxis. Welcome back to Business at its Best. You know, a hard drive in the wrong hands poses a massive security threat. Onboard memory is nearly ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Computer hard drives and copiers. When it's time to say goodbye to that equipment, how are you sure that it is safely scrubbed? One person in Idaho knows. Molly Wingert owns Secure Data Solution. Molly, thank you so much for being with us. You do work throughout the Snake River Plain. And first of all, tell us about SDS and what you do.
Well, Secure Data Sanitization takes care of all the hard drives, does a lot of the state and federal accounts. What it does is it actually erases the hard drive, is the method that we use. We do not use the DoD wipe anymore because 1 out of 4 of those fail.
Department of Defense.
Department of Defense wipe.
So let's talk about this idea of erasing a hard drive. What needs to happen?
Well, it's called the end of life. So when you get rid of a computer system, you've got to do something with that hard drive. You've got customers' names and number. If you just donate that or you auction it off, you're looking to be sued for that because you're not taking care of your end of life on that. So you need to either have your ITs doing a wipe on it. It needs to be 3, which is the national wipe, but 1 out of 4 of those fails. So you actually are better off getting a third party to come in and do it and get a certification for it. SDS handles each one of those at a $2 million policy to protect you for them.
So you're carrying the $2 million liability policy when you go out and wipe a hard drive. So when we talk about this business and it has the computers lined up and they say, I just want these computers gone, they can actually donate the computers.
They could donate it or they could have it remarketed. But what customers need to know in businesses, from the moment it leaves their place to wherever it's going, they are still responsible for that information. So whoever puts it on is responsible for the FTC. So they want to bring an in-house person in. So they want to remember, as much as they want to get that out of their stock and get it out of their warehouse, you need to stop and do your security first.
All right.
Because you're looking at millions of dollars.
SDS, you accept the computers and they go into Computers for Kids.
They do.
So
they can either be donated over or we can remarket. If they have newer systems, we can remarket and bring back some of their costs for them.
Quick search
it's up to them.
of SDS on the web will find you, Molly Wingert. Yes. Thank you so much for being with us today. Business at its Best continues from a regional perspective, highlighting work in Idaho Falls and Pocatello. You've been there. Thank you, Molly, for being with us. And we've talked about the liability issues, but simply reformatting that drive is not going to cut it. When we come back, some other issues that you've got to face when it comes to keeping your business safe. You are watching Business at its Best, presented by Ataraxis. Ataraxis makes this program possible each week. The company takes care of the day-to-day work of HR, benefits, and payroll so a business owner can focus on growing business. Dave Lacani is with Ataraxis and joins us. Dave, thanks so much. Our focus today is on security. So let's talk about this idea of keeping information within the company, and you got a few steps right off the bat.
Absolutely. So one of the most important things is taking a look at employee data. We keep so much data inside of a company about employees that can lead to identity theft or anything else if that's not properly protected. So the biggest thing for employers to think about is what information do they have that they have to keep protected properly, and basically it's anything that has health information or an employee social security number on it or any identifying information about an employee. Phone numbers, addresses, those things.
And you shared Abercrombie & Fitch was hit with a huge fine for
losing $90,000.
$1,090,000,
right,
which would shut a small business down.
Absolutely. And it was because they had the I-9 forms, the immigration form that we all fill out when we become employed. Those forms have to have a record of everyone who has ever touched those. So if somebody, let's just say for example, someone gets married, changes their name, somebody needs to go in and change that form saying that this person now has a different last name. If there is not a record showing when the form was touched, who touched it, and what change was made, you're in violation. But that's not why they got fined. They got fined because they had these electronically and there was no record of who electronically had seen these. And so you have to have very specific measures set up so that you know exactly who's touched what, when, and why.
Now let's talk about some specific requirements that employers need to be aware of when they're talking about personnel safety.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that employers have to think about is keeping all of the employees safe all the time. So let's just say that someone has a restraining order against them. One of the employees has a restraining order against someone else, or someone has a restraining order, and they come into the office every day, work every day. It's your responsibility as an employer to make sure that that everyone else is safe by letting people, by taking the proper precautions to make sure that no one could come in and do that, do anything wrong. But most importantly, it's to also keep that information confidential from anyone who is not a direct supervisor who doesn't need to know.
All right, Dave Lacani, we're out of time. Thank you so much. Ataraxis is the name of the company underwriting this show. Speaking of keeping your information safe, what about that copy machine that sets on top of your desk? The folks from Yoast have some information for you.
The easiest thing would be to download some free software off the internet and just scramble that hard drive, okay? And you can override it like 3 times. That takes care of 99.5%, and it's really clean again. The most secure is to remove the hard drive, but once you remove a hard drive and destroy it, that copier will not work. You'll have to replace it with another hard drive.
Now think about identity theft, because most of that equipment has some kind of memory on board. It's important for you to consider as you think about keeping your business and your customers safe.
Okay, how are we going to clean up this hard drive? And like I said, the easiest way is we have software that can can do that, and it's not real expensive, but there is a labor charge because you have to come in and do it. It's not normally. You can build those into your leases up front. That would be something that you would want to consider to say how we're going to handle lease end and what we're going to do. I have a couple of things that we go through, and we also sell a lot of used equipment and lease equipment that we get from others. And so when we get it in, we first of all wipe out all of the personal information that might be in there, passwords and logins and stuff like that. We make sure that's all gone. Again, it's encrypted, being overwritten. Someone could get it, but they're not as concerned.
When it's time for you to upgrade your equipment or change something out, be sure that you're protected and think about your clientele. Dealing with a customer's sensitive information is as critical as dealing with your own.
If it's 3 or 4 years or less in age, you could just go down and buy any hard drive that you'd have to match the specs and the size, but you could buy it locally. If it is older than 4 years, you're most likely going to have to buy it from the manufacturer, and it's going to be very expensive to actually replace that hard drive. So that's the thing. They need to either have it scrambled or they need to replace it, and they can do that with a local copier dealer, or they could do it themselves.
Look for a reputable, trustworthy sales team. That'll be the first step in protecting yourself when buying used equipment.
Almost all the desktop models from beginning to end now, current, do not really have hard drives. It's on ROM chips that are on and RAM chips that are on, and that's where it stores.
And that does it for this edition. A few items on your agenda to do this week to secure your data. Have a great week, and we'll see you right back here next week for the next edition of Business at its Best.